some incidences in other farms, and with our transporting abalone to the airport, we had attempted hijackings.
It's actually part of a bigger problem. So when the abalone poachers need to move their goods on into the market, they usually get brought up by gangsters who are also into moving drugs. In fact, sometimes the abalone is even swapped for drugs, and the poachers and the community become addicted to those drugs, like, for example, the tick and its very destructive impact on humanus. And once they're on the tick, they can't come off. It literally permanently wires their neural pathways. So yeah, it actually destroys communities. So what starts off as trying to make a living, even though it's illegal, ends up being part of a greater criminal network, and ultimately destroys the community through violence and through drug addiction.
I can already see, just from being a surfer, and surf spots where there used to be a lot of abalone, we were able to surf much easier. Nowadays there's thick kelp there, so that's obviously one impact of this.
The abalone poaching affects abalone farmers because the poachers sell their abalone, number one, at a very low quality, and it's normally in dried form, and at a very low price because they don't really have that many costs, and they sell a lot of it into the Chinese market. And then when the abalone farmers need to sell their high quality product in, they find that they have to lower their price just to compete with the poached abalone that's on the market. So it does two things. The first thing it does is it makes the Chinese consumer think that all South African abalone is poor quality. And the second thing is that it means the abalone farmers are getting less for their abalone, and sometimes they are then battling to cover their costs, and it could actually lead to job losses. In order to solve the problem of abalone poaching, the following needs to happen. DAF, the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, need to stop the poaching in the water. In the past, they've waited for the poachers to take the abalone out of the water, and then only did they confiscate it. They do this because they auction the confiscated abalone so that they can earn money for their department. This self-enrichment does not stop the actual poaching, and thus does not preserve the wild abalone species. The South African export authorities need to introduce a minimum quality standard for the processing of all abalone. Poached abalone is normally dried by the poachers and is of a very poor quality. Introducing a high standard of processing will allow the authorities to identify and stop the export of poached abalone. Many fishermen turned to poaching when their fishing licenses were not renewed. They relied on these licenses for a living in order to provide for their families. They turned to poaching as they could not find employment elsewhere. The allocation of fishing licenses needs to be reviewed and allocated fairly, not in a corrupt manner as was previously done. If the poachers have a legal means of earning an income again, they will be less likely to turn to poaching.